Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hospitality Huddles. This week, I wanted to share the conversation between myself and my good friend Michelle Moreno from QAB Leadership in our Hospitality Brews LinkedIn Live show. Each month, we're going to tackle some of the biggest news stories affecting our industry and give you a little bit of an update on what we're both working on, as well as talking about our favourite biscuit to go with our brew. So check in every month on LinkedIn Live. We're going to be there, but we're going to also put it onto the audio here on Hospitality Huddles. So without further ado, let's get into the show. Hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you next time. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first edition of Hospitality Brews. Myself and Michelle were chatting, and we were talking about how we always sit there and talk about hospitality, and we thought, well, we might as well jump on and share some of our wisdom, if that's what you call it, with each other. So I'm really excited about this, Michelle. I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I thank you for thinking of it, and considering how much tea we drink, I think it's a perfect name. So let's do it.
I think it came to me over a brew one morning, actually. So I've got mine in my Leeds cup for anyone who thinks that yours is a bit plain compared to mine, but
yeah, but it matches my kitchen.
Yeah, I wish we would have been drinking champagne out of this, but doesn't look like it this season. So anyway, so we're there with our brew. So Michelle, if people might not have seen you or heard you, which is probably very unlikely for a number of different reasons.
Shy, retiring personality.
Exactly. We have the format down to the T in the digital hospitality room that I go to every week, which is we have to do 60 seconds to talk about who we are and what we do. So why don't you fire away with what you're doing for 60 seconds?
No, don't start the 60 seconds. I'm not very good at this, so I've written something down for me to practice. Yeah. So tell me when to go.
Go.
Okay, I am Michelle Moreno, founder of QAB Leadership, and I believe the most meaningful way to lead us out of this exhaustion era is to empower our leaders. And as I've been working with senior leaders and founders and owners, I've realized that if we get communication and collaboration skills correct, plus we evolve our relationship with uncertainty and urgency, we then get to the point that we can fearlessly lead. And from that point, we can move ourselves, individuals, teams, and our business forward and even bloody enjoy it. So that's what I do.
That'd be good, wouldn't it? And for those people who don't know me, I am Scot. I'm the founder of Auden Hospitality. I get to practice this every week, so I'm down to a T. So I help hoteliers think differently about F&B to create outlets that their guests will love. So very simple from me on that one. I won't take 60 seconds because if people are on my profile watching this, they're going to know I am probably anyway. So that's all cool. And do you know what? Just before we came on, I met this guy called Brian Meredith on LinkedIn, and Brian lives in Florida, but he's actually going through a thing at the minute on LinkedIn about how he's doing his move with his wife in 2025 to move to Spain. And he's a hospitality coach. So he's moving to Spain or Portugal. He's doing it all on LinkedIn. It's really nice. I met him in London when he was in London. But funnily, and there's going to be a point to this long drabble, Brian's a very good guy, but he sent me one from Secret London, and it says a London fish and chip shop has been named the best in the UK. And he sent his message after was, have you been to this place? If so, do you agree?
And what is it?
Like, it's called the London Fish Shop or something. Anyway, it's in Brixton, so it's not far from you. But I just said to him, I've never eaten fish and chips in London because I just don't know why you would. And they leave the skin on the fish, and it's disgusting.
You go on and on about that.
Yeah, and I just put, for some reason, they always leave the skin on down south. And being from the north, I've never seen that before. If I want good fish and chips, I go home to Leeds. So anyway, what that brings me nicely onto is biscuits. Because when I sent you the message saying, I think we should do this thing, and I think we should call it Hospitality Brews, and we definitely need to talk about biscuits. Have you brought a biscuit today?
Yes.
To drink with your brew. What have you brought?
Yeah, no, but this is where you've got class, and I'm scum of the earth. Yes, because and this is true. Yeah, I like like a corner shop ginger nut biscuit. Look, and this is true because this is what we have in the house.
Straight from the spa.
Yeah, no, this co-op, they can be our
Okay.
sponsors. But I like a strong ginger nut biscuit because you can
Mm,
dunk it. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good call actually for the dunker. I
yeah.
was gonna bring chocolate hobnobs,
Mm.
right?
But,
Because
Al,
for
my
me,
partner, our friend, is devastated that you like a hobnob.
he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't like hobnobs, does he? Because
No.
it ends up with all the bits in the bottom, which is a bit
No.
minging. But yeah. So I went in the cupboard before this and I went down to go make a tea because I forgot to make a tea, which would have quite frankly ruined the whole thing. And Reed, my son, had eaten the chocolate hobnobs yesterday, so I've come away with a rich tea. So that's
Oh,
what I'm doing today.
a rich tea, classic. I like a
Yeah.
rich tea, though can't
Well,
dunk.
well, after the hobnob, I did actually go for Sally. That's my wife, for anyone who doesn't know. Long-standing misery of putting up with me. She
Yeah.
bought from Marks and Spencer's
Mm.
Belgian chocolate shortbread. And there was
Oh,
only 2 left, so I was like, I better not. So I'm on rich tea today. But anyway, for people watching this thinking, what the hell are these two going on about? I've got 3 things to talk about today that's happened over the last month, and I think it's going to be really interesting. And the first one is you did a post, I think it was a week ago, where you went to the Counter Talk panel,
yeah,
and I saw that you shared a post about stop romanticizing about your hospitality past. And I thought it was a really good subject to talk about today because I think it's much more in depth than probably doing like a short form Instagram or LinkedIn post. And I think over the last couple of years, probably as we've set up our own businesses, and you're a bit further on in the journey than me, I think we've probably both had to forget our romantic hospitality past to an extent as
yeah.
we hustle our way through. So I guess tell us more about the panel, about Counter Talk for those people who might not know it, and then yeah, let's talk about stop romanticizing about our hospitality past.
Well, Counter Talk are a great community, I suppose. They're not London based, but I think their identity is a stronghold in London itself. And they are trying to support our community in knowledge and information. And there was a panel with Merle from Well and Being, who I work with, a guy called Raj, who's from Boobala. And the conversation was around how do we, bring together the cross generations of the people who are my age, your age coming up to, and not even so much the millennials, but the expectations of the Gen Zs moving forward, and what are the examples of good moving forward. So there's 2 parts of it. That conversation was very interesting because they were talking about the expectations of Gen Zs, and them saying that they're pretty assertive. They know what they want, they're clear on boundaries, and they want to know the whys and the purpose. Though I also thought, which was very interesting, that they sort of touched on but really made me think afterwards, is they were talking about how much they want development. And we would think, sometimes that development is wanted maybe a little too quickly. And, there needs to be more of a process to it. Though the other part I thought that they didn't discuss, which I think was really important, is the importance of feedback to them, and not just receiving feedback, though them being able to give feedback to their leaders. And I think from our generation, we find feedback uncomfortable at times anyway. And the fact that we have a younger generation with what we perceive as less experience wanting to feed back on us, that is where I think the conversation becomes stalemate and we can't actually hear each other. What do you think if I say that to you?
Yeah, I probably agree with quite a lot of it actually. I think definitely the new workforce coming through have definitely got higher demands than probably we did at the same
Mm-hmm.
kind of age.
Yeah,
But it's a very different world now as well, isn't it? I think things are a lot easier to get your hands on. I think social media and information being more accessible has made it easier for people to demand because they know it's
yeah,
there. Whereas probably when we were at that age, we were kind of relying on those who've been there and done it before us to share knowledge, whereas I don't think people necessarily need that so much anymore, do they? But I think I can't remember where it was, but I was talking about how that kind of old-fashioned job buddy, a mentor type role when someone first started, has kind of gone now, hasn't it? Whether that's short-staffed, whether that's just it's kind of fizzled out or whatever it might be, I'm not sure. But what I worry about with this is are we going to find a huge gap in that kind of current middle management, where maybe our generation and the experience moves on or isn't in touch anymore? The new generation is coming up and wanting more, but because of all the reasons we kind of know about in the industry right now, we have a bit of a knowledge gap at that mid-level management. And how is that all going to work with the guys coming through? I think that's going to be a really interesting situation.
Well, and that middle management is always, I think, the toughest stage anyway. You've got so much to learn. You've got all your many monetary elements. You've got to learn how to run a P&L, how to budget, the responsibility of the business, whilst you all got promoted because you were a great barista, a great bartender, a great waiter. You went up, and all of a sudden you've got human beings who are annoying, wonderfully annoying, with their own problems and their own difficulties, and it becomes complex very quickly, and you don't have the skills to do it. Whereas previously, like you said, we probably had a bit more mentorship, time, space, and more people around for it to not feel so overwhelming. And so I think that's where this strain comes from. And I think the other thing on that mentorship element, and it's interesting that you said, has it gone a bit, is for us to understand each other across generations, we have to talk to each other, because until we find common ground, the key to negotiation and the key to moving forward is that we find common ground in each other to be able to listen, hear, understand, and move forward together, sharing the wisdom with the expectations and all of that. And if you're correct, if their moments of mentorships are less, that is where the disconnect is also coming from, because we're not hearing each other or understanding each other up or down to understand what the reality is from both sides of the table and what you're responsible for at that moment in time.
Yeah, me and Chris Hall were looking, or Chris showed me this scientific research. I've shared it loads of times. I've given this example loads of times online, and it was of I think a restaurant group, 6 locations in London, and what it found, it was a scientific research that did loads of analysis on kind of mental ill health and well-being and stuff. And what it found was that the people most likely to suffer burnout was middle management.
Yeah.
But what it also showed was that the most activity towards well-being, mental ill health was being done towards the team members, because the theory was that we do it for the mass, and over kind of the business, it'll even itself out. What they were actually saying was you should spend the same amount of money on your middle managers, because once those middle managers have better well-being, better, aren't suffering from mental ill health, aren't suffering from burnout, getting proper rest, that would then transcend down into the team, because they'd be in a much better place to look after it. And it was something, when I think you put it on the post as well, there was a couple of bits on there in terms of burnout and stuff like that, and that scientific research would back that up. So it was a really interesting thing for me to go, actually focus on the people who are going to lead your teams, because they're the ones who are going to make the biggest difference, isn't it, I guess?
That's why I've got the business. That's where the answers are. We need to get them skilled up, confident, resilient, to be able to move it forward. Your point also on this romanticizing the past is the amount of times I hear from people going, there's just not the resilience there used to be. And I don't believe, I think that's nonsense.
Yeah.
I think when we were working the hours we were working, we were exhausted. We burnt out regularly. We had substance abuse. We had, mental health issues. We still have them now, but all of these before were hidden under the carpet, and everybody was just having a party. And we weren't educated enough to see who is having a party and who is not in a good place. And I think, and that's the other part, is what your idea of resilience. A few of us made it through, but so many of us, and the reason why we have an issue with recruitment also is because it wasn't a party and it wasn't good. And our idea of what resilience looks like moving forward, and for this generation who are going to take us through, needs to evolve for us to become successful.
And what do you think, though? What do you think needs to change? Because I guess if we want to make a change and we want to start like helping the next generation coming through, there's got to be a change in our generation ultimately, as the people who are currently sitting in senior positions who can help the next level down, who can then fundamentally help the next level down. Like what do you see? What do you see from kind of whether it's your clients, whether talking to people in the industry about what needs to happen to try and get that change booked? Because I'm seeing it with people I work with, that kind of middle management, that F&B manager, there's a definite gap in knowledge. But yet I look sometimes and think their expectation upon what they're going to deliver is exactly the same as what it would have been pre-COVID, maybe 5-10 years ago. Do you see the same?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think it's people don't have the will to want to do it. It's that our priorities are in the wrong order.
Yeah.
And so while we're always focusing on the urgent and not the important, so let's take all of these priorities. We're too much in the urgent constantly and not enough in the urgent, in the important, because the important is where the holding hands, thinking things through, learning to understand what we need to do and support and help. If we're just constantly in the urgent, we're just reactive all the time. So that's one priority. The other one is we can't be driven by a P&L that's a cost control P&L, because everything about development and people goes out the window if the pressure on the people running the business is all around the P&L. How the P&L is written and what we measure on a P&L is part of the issue as well. We don't measure people in impact on the P&L for us to have it as a driver in making, and we're not, this isn't just about, we want to make businesses healthy. So I think sometimes people think when you're talking about a people element, that it's about, we want everybody skipping around. Do I want everybody enjoying this industry and inspired by this industry and know the opportunities of the industry? Though if that business isn't financially healthy, we're locking up and going home.
Yeah.
Because we live in this urgent world, we can't see what good looks like. You look at the Dishomes, the Hawksmoors, the Blacklocks, the people who are investing in the right places of people are healthy businesses. And so can we evolve what our priorities are to be able to understand that? And the other thing I think is important as well is that middle management, there's less of them around, so they've got more plates to spin. And so understanding that there's more pressure on everyone, in every angle we look at is more pressure. And so where are you going to put your priority and what's going to have the biggest impact to be able to get them foundationally stronger, build the skills, and it is a skill of what resilience look like. I have a thing at the moment, I was writing it down yesterday, about like we've got to get to a place where we understand that uncertainty is coming. Yeah. Uncertainty is the most certain thing we have. It is heightened in every way. And once you flip that mindset of it, we can somehow get excited by that. Stop looking for the certainty. Stop looking for it's harder to plan ahead nowadays. We've got to be able to get it that we collaborate tightly, quickly. I hate the word agile for another reason, but it is that then small, tight conversations of what do you need now to nudge you forward, and not massive growth plans, because too much changes too frequently.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd definitely agree with that. Actually, I was having a conversation with, it was Matt Rolfe from Canada last week, and he was saying now that the businesses he's working with are only kind of budgeting 3 years for that exact reason. Is 5 years, the extra 2 years are almost pointless So everything is about 3 years and looking at what your 3-year plan is. And then it's really easy to break that down into short term, which is 1 year, medium term, which is next year, and then long term, which is the 3rd year. And then you just keep iterating as you go. And I think that whole bit about uncertainty, if COVID's taught us nothing, then it has to be that, isn't it? So it's how do you build up that kind of cash reserve that means you can sleep well at night? Because I still think it loiters with a lot of people about what happened then. And then how can you then build off the back of that and help people? And I think I've got a post written actually, and I haven't posted it yet, but it was kind of talking about like F&B strategies, and when you look at investors, owners, hoteliers, and you look at when they put things in place or new ideas, new initiatives, and how many times out of those initiatives do they truly let them grow sustainably and organically? And I think sometimes it's like this post is written, it's a bit like, Alex Ferguson didn't do anything in his first couple of years at Man U. Look what he went to achieve. Jurgen Klopp didn't do much at Liverpool. Look what he went on to achieve. But they were given the time, right? And I think we in hospitality we're as bad as football because we just don't give strategy and we don't give initiatives time to organically grow. We want it now. And if we don't get it, we want to move on to the next thing. And all it does is confuse the teams, gets them frustrated, defocuses them. And I think there's a lot to be said in that whole bit about we know something might not go right, but what are we planning now to go, okay, what do we need to tweak? What are the benchmarks of saying, has it truly not worked, or is it just we haven't allowed it to work? And I think there's definitely some bits in there. I presented the F&B strategy document to some owners of a hotel group today, and it was like, okay, the first thing is how do we get the immediate wins, the quick impact wins?
Oh, I just read it. I loved it.
Yeah, and I think the bit about when we were talking about clustering properties, and then once they get to a point where they're ready to break off, let them break off, but bring them all together, consolidate, really focus on driving quality, consistency, focusing on the team, putting skill in the right place, and then letting them build and letting them grow. And when they get to that point, understand what that tipping point is and then push them out. And I think I just think we're too reactive sometimes to the fact that things don't grow straight away.
Oh, I've got about 3 things coming to you from that one, right? One, isn't that what that's all about? Unreasonable hospitality, Will Gadara. That's a 10, 15 year, and that's why. And what you're talking about as well is a strategy to get to culture, because then culture can move the business forward. Yeah. And I was listening to a podcast today. Her name is Brené Brown, who I idolize, and it's with a futurist. And she was talking about that. They were talking about that. There's 2 types of leaders at the moment. The scramblers, which are the ones what you're describing, are constantly trying to come up with the idea, trying to come up with the response, but a bit like, a deer in headlights. Or you have the ostriches that have just got their head buried in the sand going, you used to work in our day. You used to work in our day. And it's not moving forward, They're their words, not mine. I wish I could. But she talks about this, Amy Webb. She talks about that until we get leaders leading through uncertainty. What did she say? You've got to embrace it and reduce uncertainty by making collaborative small decisions. Yeah. So we've got to be leading with uncertainty. We've got to embrace it. And we've got to reduce uncertainty by making collaborative small decisions. And I think that's what I do with my clients that are most successful. Like I work with founders who are entrepreneurial, my favorite kind. They are passionate. They have got loads of energy. They've got quality. They might not necessarily have always the leadership skills, but that's what I'm here to do, because I can help them be them and create the space for the teams to understand what does this actually look like in small, strategic, with clarity steps. So we all know where we're going, bit by bit, by bit by bit. And I think that that's going to be key for this middle management, back to what we were saying before, to build their confidence. Yeah, because I get annoyed with the word confidence. Yeah, because if we looked at a picture of confidence in a picture dictionary, like, I would be it, wouldn't I? Loud, in your face, happy to talk to anyone. Though confidence isn't what gets you success in life. Competence is what gets you successful in life. And we need to give these middle management, because of what they've gone through in the last few years as well, because generations are different, because social media impacted mental health and continues to, we've got to help grow their competence. And again, that needs to be bite-sized, bit by bit by bit.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. I mean, there's everything. If we haven't worked out yet that the world is going short form, then we're kind of behind anyway, right? So bit by bit by bit, and how do you make that happen in everything that you do? Kind of, it's how we live in, isn't it? The next thing I want to go through, talk about is. I always talk about putting community at the heart of everything you do, especially in hotels and in hotel F&B. And one of our favorite venues we've ever worked on together, Reform Dubai, is a prime example and a perfect example of that, isn't it? And I thought it would be good to kind of go talk about what part does community play in business, but not only business, but personally as well as you grow. And I guess this is where we can probably pull on a bit of our journey, setting up our own businesses, in terms of that community that you can build around you is really important, isn't it? And I think I guess the message from this would be, and we can talk about the business bit, that's not probably the primary bit of this, is I was doing a podcast episode with Steve Turk the other day, and we were talking about how I think one of my biggest mistakes was, especially over COVID, was how I was too company focused and I didn't think about me or what was next for me. And I think that was probably because I was quite happy at the time and I didn't necessarily see a different route. But I really want to kind of touch on it again with people, because I think it's super important that they're building a network, no matter whether you're in your own business, whether you're working for someone, you're building a network, you're building a community, you're looking at people around you who you can align yourselves with, because I think it's going to be a huge part in terms of what goes forwards, I think. So, yeah. What's your feelings on kind of as you've grown and done QAB leadership and the community piece around it and all of that? How important is it? And then definitely within, obviously you're working with the ministry and they're building a huge community from a business perspective. How that all works from that bit as well.
When I might get emotional in this bit, I think I've always been you've worked with me for years. Like how I work is by community. It's always a collective. It's always a collaboration. So when I started QAB, and it was very lonely in many different ways, I realized that I built this world previously that was so tight and small that when I needed to venture out on my own and develop, I was like on my own, and it was scary and it was intimidating. And network, and I thought I can't it's not like I don't like talking, but I don't like talking shit. So networking to me always seemed eggy. I'm not interested in it. I've got a load of great friends. I don't need to go and meet people. Though that was completely wrong. And what I realized was there's a huge community in this hospitality industry, especially through LinkedIn. I found how many people are friends have we met through LinkedIn, and shared common interests and shared goals. People want to help. Yeah, people want to support, and that's complex in different ways. In terms of, like, if you take yours and mine relationship, we don't get through building this relationship without each other, because we're our sounding boards, we're our support system, we're our mentor, we're our cheerleaders. That's how you and me have grown, developed the relationship over the years, from working together to where we are now, by working side by side in a way, even though we have different businesses. And then you have the community out there who wants to, everybody's got the same issues. Everybody wants it to be better. And there's so many people who are so excited and inspired by our industry still, that we don't get that message out enough. I think in this world where uncertainty and volatility and complexity and ambiguity, with everything that's going on, community becomes the hug to go, we've got this. You're not on your own. We're in this together. We know it's going to be a challenge, but we can keep moving forward. And that's with this, and you can talk about how it works with community in terms of now having like I work with the ministry, their co-working and membership is like insane. Like it's a pleasure to be part of. And that's a business that's just going to grow because community has become, and because we were stuck indoors for so many years, community has become something we need. As humans, we have to belong. We have to belong. And I think that community element in how we develop businesses currently, especially in hospitality, trends we're seeing, what businesses want, how do we bring our teams together? How do we work together? How do we solve the issues of the hospitality world? Community becomes, and you get diverse thoughts from that. And until we get diverse thought and more conversations, we're going to be the ostrich. And I don't want to be the ostrich or the scrambler. I want to be right at the front, like with my picket, moving it forward.
Yeah, it's a really, I agree with you. I think the LinkedIn thing's interesting, isn't it? Because I am really shocked still who says yes to conversations when you have conversations, and the amount of people that you just kind of get introduced to or you meet on LinkedIn and what you can learn from them is phenomenal. And I think it's something that I would encourage anyone who's listening, who's kind of down on the journey but wants to move up, to start speaking to people ahead on LinkedIn, and not necessarily, if you're if you're a restaurant manager, don't talk to F&B directors. Like, go further up that chain, because you'll be really surprised who's willing to help. And especially when I've been doing Auden, like the amount of people that you've reached out to that are kind of ahead of the game and stuff, and have been able to share information for free or share advice for free is just phenomenal. And then those people become like huge supporters of you as well. So then when you start posting, you start doing content, those people are the first people to help. You're doing podcasts, you're doing things like this, which is why I love going to the digital hospitality room, because it's, I remember the first time I met Sean and we had a conversation about a few things to do with content and media and stuff like that. And I said to him at the end, you've given me a half an hour of your time for free, just downloaded pure nuggets. What can I do for you? He says, you can do two things. And I was like, okay. He said, listen to my podcast, and these are the episodes that I think will be perfect for what you've told me today. And literally he picked out 2 or 3 that were bang on for what I was interested in. He said, and if you like them, leave a review. And he said, and then come on the digital hospitality room every Wednesday and Friday and turn up and get involved. And that's exactly why I go there every week, because for him to give up that time and share it, and the impact that it's had since, and to ask for a review, and it still helped with those episodes. I think there's more people like Sean on LinkedIn than that, but I think it's there. I think I always remember the first time I spoke to Jim Taylor, and he was like, okay, so it was right at the start of Auden.
Shout out Jim.
I look
very red at the moment, by the way. Carry on.
Yeah, that's okay. Open the window or something. It's hot today for a change. So so basically I remember him saying, like, what are you going to do for marketing? And I was well, I'm not really sure, but I think I'm going to do this, that, and the other. And he was like, honestly, I tried it, I lost a load of money. I do LinkedIn, this is what I do. And he saved me a load of cash. And now LinkedIn, after referrals, is the primary place I meet new people. And I think it's just a lesson that kind of goes, do you know what, don't be scared how far up the chain you go. And always make sure that you make time to try and at least just get on a call, and even if it's just a Q&A, if anything else, you're playing to their ego and they love it. So
I think people want to help. If you ask for help as well, people will offer support, I think. And I think the other thing is more and more communities within our industry trying to educate and support. You think of, I've just become a mentor for Be Inclusive Hospitality with Lorraine Cope, smashing that conversation and understanding things. Ladies of Restaurants, run by Natalia, who is bringing like younger women to inspire them of what do women look like in hospitality leadership, because the further we get up the ladder, the less we're in a, you know, I spent years being the only woman in a room, unless it was a people or sales and marketing conversation. As soon as it was a budget meeting or something, I was only one in the room, not listening as well, probably.
No, I think that's definitely needs to change for sure, that whole thing. And I guess it's good seeing more and more. I mean, I don't even know why it's a conversation, really. We've had this conversation before, haven't we? I find it really difficult, but I'm a white male guy, so I've had it incredibly easy, but I still find it really odd how we're having these conversations around females being in decent positions in hotel groups, in restaurants and all the rest of it, because to be honest, most of the women I've ever worked with have been the better people in the business. So yeah, it's a strange one. It's a strange one. I remember once I was accused of being sexist, and I looked around and there was like literally about 6 people all around the table. But I'll remind you of that story because you were around at that point.
I remember who it was, but also as well, you've always been surrounded by not shy women as well.
Yeah, I couldn't be further from the truth, could it? Quite frankly, like I've always just kept my mouth shut. Apart from anything else, I don't get involved. I definitely used to play the one who just keep your mouth shut and speak when it was relevant, not get too involved.
That is not true. But if you want to live in that, if you want to romanticize that past, Mr.
Yeah,
Cheers,
exactly. I'll romanticize it. Yeah, right. Last one. Last one. Moving swiftly on. Last one because I'm looking a bit red now, actually. But last one. I want to talk about so Hilton bought the Nomad.
Yes.
And I find that really interesting. And then about 3 days ago, I saw that Hyatt had bought Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So now Mr. and Mrs. Smith hotels are in the Hyatt network. And I find that really weird because the whole business model around Mr. and Mrs. Smith is around independent boutique hotels that are like real gems and you can't find, and sitting in that type of booking engine just feels very odd to me. And then really interestingly, the Beaumont here in London has now left Hilton to go out on their own. Biltmore? Is it? Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Biltmore, fine.
Or unless the Beaumont have 2.
No, maybe, I don't know. I'm going to Google it. We'll Google it so people know. But anyway, they've left Hilton to go out on their own and do their own thing independently, haven't they? And I just think it's really interesting, isn't it, how this keeps cropping up. The Nomad thing taken over by Hilton, I find really strange. They're about to go roll them out, and do they retain the same kind of feel about them? And then I guess the other question on that would be, if you were a small independent chain and one of those big boys came in and offered you tens, hundreds of millions, can you blame them saying no? Would be my thing. So yeah, I just thought it'd be an interesting topic to talk about while I look at it. But yeah, what do you think on this? Because is it really just going to end up in a point where it's like the 1 or 2 independent hotel groups and then the big chains, or because it?
Well, they're different stories, aren't they? The thing with and I think because we come from F&B driven hotel backgrounds, like I started off in Schrager, you've spent your time in Dorchester Collection, like we know when hotels can do F&B extremely well. So I think there's part of it that you get nervous with someone like, you know, knowing like Nomad's a brand that's always about lifestyle, food and beverage being the heart of why people stay there, have the, you know, night of my life in Nomad, New York, with lots of margaritas. Your worry is that a company like Hilton buying it up, now of course there are exceptions to the Hilton and you know it all depends on ownership, but as a brand in general, it's not going to have that independent uniqueness that will drive this aspirational style of sexiness, because it will be more for the masses. So that's where you, I think, as a guest, you panic, no?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is why I've got quite a lot of respect for Ennismore, to be honest, because I think with some of their brands, especially like 25 Hours, I just think they've done a really good job of keeping it local. So it doesn't necessarily, you kind of get the comfort that it's part of a big engine, but it feels very relevant to where you are. And I think that's why I know how much effort that they put into doing that, and I think that's why it stands out for me. It was the Biltmore. Sorry, why did I got the Beaumont from? Beaumont.
I love that, but you know I even work with them.
You work with the Biltmore.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
why did
yeah.
I think the Beaumont? Anyway, for anyone thinking,
So,
Biltmore, London,
but if you,
LXR leaving Hilton.
yes, they are leaving Hilton, and that will be an interesting one for them, because quite often as well, when you have a full independent hotel, is you'll go into a look, business is hard everywhere, isn't it? And you're getting a branding because they're opening up your booking possibilities. That's why you're getting it. I don't know the reasons why the Biltmore's moving away from the Hilton, but they are, and they're going back to an independent feel, and so they should in their location. Though Ennismore's interested because they're owned by Accor as well, and I work with Accor doing a 6-month coaching program, taking some of their senior women to vice presidents all over the world. And the thing that they seem to do really well is a bit like, how LMVH run it. There's, they'll have Moet and Chandon, they'll have fashion brands, but they allow the personalities of the brands to lead. This is back to culture as well. When people talk about company culture is an idealism that is an expectation you'd like to set but cannot be achieved. Culture is driven by smaller teams and the main influencer in the teams. And what Ennismore does, or Accor above it, or LMVH in another way, is they let the personalities of them businesses drive themselves, so they feel independent.
Yeah.
Well, even though they're not independent, they have multiple brands.
Yeah, Dorchester Collection were very good at that as well. They kept each hotel individual, and it had its own story and its own history and all the rest of it, didn't it? And I think that's what makes them quite special. I just think the whole, for me, that whole bit around kind of finding, certainly when I go away, I like to do boutique. I like to do kind of lifestyle, smaller independents where you get that kind of bit more personal touch. And that's nothing against some of the big chains, because they've got the place and they definitely have. If I go on business, I'd much rather probably stay in one of those, because you kind of know what you're going to get. It's functional, and it does what it says on the tin, doesn't it? But yeah, I just thought it was really interesting how there's all this stuff kind of going on where these chains are buying in. I think Accor recently did quite a big one, didn't they, with I can't remember the hotel group now, but they did quite a big acquisition. And I just think it's interesting how they're looking at some of these brands as well and going, actually, we can find a real gap in what we offer as a business, even though they've got all those hotels to start buying these kind of smaller brands up.
And also knowing it from the development side, yes, we know that from a consumer's point of view, most people think the hotel brand owns the hotel. They don't. There's an owning company who owns that hotel, and the hotel is normally just a management contract or a franchise. Knowing how hard it is to sell rooms nowadays, you're going to go to the person who's got the biggest database to put your... Because it isn't so personal, it is a financial business, So if you're going to Accor and then they've got a catalogue of all the brands they can go with, and they're wider, it's too much hard work for a owning company or an asset management company. The bigger companies then can do the work for you.
Well, do you know, it's funny. I had this conversation with, it was actually on another podcast episode with Omar Buber. So he runs an agency called Studio Circa, and they do a lot of branding and storytelling and creation for like independent hotels. And I had this conversation with him saying, how can the smaller independent hotels compete with the chains? Because fundamentally, the chains can spend so much more money on Google placement. They can drive all of that. They've got much more traffic, which naturally gets them further up. You as an independent, do you then become kind of resigned to being at the threat of booking.com and all these type of people, because that's where you can get the most visibility? It's a real battle, isn't it? So you can't blame some of these independents or independent ownerships and investor groups to go, we align with some of these people. And you've worked with a couple before, and we've worked with a couple that have multiple different businesses with different brands, so Marriott's and Hilton's, etc., in the same portfolio, and they just really go with the building and the asset they've got, the micro local, the speak with these guys and see which brand's going to fit, where the gap is in all that big catalogue of brands, and they look at how they can kind of curate it together. So it's really mixed, isn't it, from that perspective as well, how it can all piece together. But
though your point goes back to probably why we're a bit like with the Mr. and Mrs. Smith, for a trusted place to go to, whereas now you feel like there's going to be a bit of a slant on the decision.
Yeah, you do a bit, don't you? And this is nothing against Hyatt. If you've got any issues with F&B, give me a shout. But just before anyone gets worried, but it is, isn't it? And I think that's one of those things where, as a traveler, and speaking here from a traveler, you always kind of knew what you were going to get with Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And that's nothing to say that it's not going to end up being exactly the same in a year's time, just with more money, more opportunity, able to hit the people better. And it could do. But there's that little element of doubt that sits there, I guess. And it's interesting. But it's funny. I was speaking a while ago to an ops director. He looked after 80 hotels in Europe, but he was part of a independent group, 500 hotels, and they had a mixture of brands. They didn't have anything under their own banner. It was very much how they align with brands. So there's people who are doing really well out of working with them, but I think there's definitely a place for that kind of lifestyle boutique hotel. It'd just be a shame if every time they get to 6, 7, 8, 10 locations, then they just get bought up and sucked up into the engine.
The point of that, though, is in growth is when you're an entrepreneur and whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a hotel, it all becomes about the team who created it. Once you get over 6, it's very, very hard to maintain it. You have to become systematic. It has to get a bit more bureaucratic. So then you get torn. So you have to give it to the big boys who are great at that, because what you're good at is the growth period and the scrappy element of doing it all together and the entrepreneurial element. When you get above 6, that's not what the business needs.
No. That's 100% for sure. Right, we've got, just before we go, we've got a couple of people who've done some comments. Yeah, but I had us on the big screen, so I wasn't seeing the comments because, to be perfectly honest, I thought, who the hell's going to watch us? So, so I just ignored it. But there you go. Awesome.
You can ask the question, but I want a theme tune as well. So if anyone's out there would like a theme tune. Go.
Awesome. Well, Brian's on. I hope he heard about the fish and chips at the start. Nicely done. I don't know what happened to you. Maybe you need to buy him a beer in London next time he's here. But yeah, we met in Belgravia. He went to Il Pampero for dinner. We had a Guinness together, so that was cool. He now knows where to get the best fish and chips in the UK. It's fascinating. Maybe if I'd read this at the time, I would have known what was fascinating. But anyway, it's easier to give feedback than to receive it. I wondered if you had both had a view on the Simon Sinek video about millennials. Do you know the video?
Oh, yeah, I do have a view on it. And I think he's talking about millennials who are from a privileged a privileged background, and I think he doesn't and maybe he has a point in what he's talking about with a certain demographic, but there's a whole world of millennials out there that are not living in the world where mummy and daddy gave them everything they wanted. And so I think it's a snippet of society and it's a wider conversation than he's obviously not working class or coming.
Do you know, I'm going to say something controversial now. If I was at a point in my career where I was going up through the leadership chain, I would rather take note of Gary V than I would Simon Sinek.
Oh, yeah.
Gary V.
Why is that controversial?
Well, because people are on the Simon Sinek bandwagon, aren't they? But do you know what I think with Simon Sinek? With Gary V. Gary V has got this big pomp and circumstance, and he's very good at what he does. But when you actually really listen to what he says, he is an incredible motivator of people. Yeah. And within his organization and within his business, he's a huge believer in putting people first. Yeah. And I think he's there and he's doing it and he's getting the T-shirt. And if we go back to when we went to go watch Stephen Bartlett, And we were walking back to the tube station after, and I still have the two girls who were walking behind us ringing in my ear who said, do you know what? You never hear anything about what he does in his business, do you? And I think Gary V tells you what's going on. He tells you what he's doing in his business. He tells you what's working. And I think if I was going to watch anyone or listen to anyone, I mean, his podcasts, I listen to them every day. They're like 11, sometimes they're 11 minutes long. Yesterday, it was like 3 hours long, and he literally just did a Zoom where he was inviting people in to ask questions, and it was just 3 hours off the cuff of just pure gold. So yeah. So my view on Simon Sinek about millennials is go listen to Gary V. Brian said proper pint is a requirement. Next time we see each other, it's probably going to be cerveza por favor. So that'll be cool. And then, unfortunately, these days, the P&L are driven by cutting costs because people want results now. Strategy has gone in a few company. I think that's probably correct, unfortunately. But I think, we need to make the change.
Though I would say it all depends. Not with the people I'm working with. They welcome strategy. They like, and everybody is excited by it. Though it's not a massive long-term strategy, it's a doable strategy.
Yeah.
Like, what's the problem? What are we avoiding? And let's work out how we're going to solve it. And that's fundamentally what I do with people. So I think in places, yes, though there's an appetite to do it differently.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. And I think, if people are getting in touch with us, I think we share enough on LinkedIn for people to understand what it is, and I think people are open to doing things differently, but sometimes they just need a little bit of guidance and a little bit of support to get on the right track and kind of take some of that risk element. And what I find quite a bit as well is that people are quite overwhelmed at the minute. There's lots going on. There's always stuff happening in the economy. We've got another train strikes next week and all the rest of it. And I think sometimes they just need someone who can help take the lead a little bit and kind of help drive it. And sometimes that having a meeting once a week can really help people kind of just focus, because it's something that's locked in the diary and it gives them time to think. Whereas if that wasn't there, they'd probably just keep going on and on and on and never make time, wouldn't they? But so yeah,
well, because it can be your feelings are getting too much in the way, and sometimes you need that to be able to go with what's the data, what are we seeing, and what are we going to do to move forward? Like, where's the action? Because the feelings and the emotional response is taking up the energy, and we could use that energy and the time to get on with it.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, this has been fun, hasn't it?
Oh, we could go on for hours.
Yeah, we could, couldn't we? We could, but it's tea time now. Should we do? Well, let's do it again. Should we do it again next month as well? We'll save up some stories. I won't get the hotel wrong next time. But anyway, these things happen.
I think great. It was fun. Well done, you.
Thank you. I'm getting good at it. Yeah, cool. So if people want to get hold of you, how do they do it?
I'm on LinkedIn daily. Yeah. So Michelle Moreno on LinkedIn. Website is qableadership.com. I updated it a little bit. I haven't changed the QAB bit yet, but that's another story. We'll save that one for next time. www.qableadership.com or Instagram, where you get stories and a bit more to know about me on QAB Leadership too. And you?
Yeah. Me, you can get LinkedIn's the best place. And I'm always watching my DMs. So if anyone wants to reach out to think differently about F&B,
private message.
Yeah, send me a private message and say, "Come and help us with my F&B." I'll be like, "Let's do it. Here's a book a call. Here's my calendar."
Can I just say, when you started mentioning like Asia the other day, I was thinking, oh, I'm just going to come and do a bit with you, like like part-time Odin, whether you want it or not.
Yeah. Well, we know that anyway, right?
Yeah.
We know that anyway. But yeah, that should be fun. Hopefully, yeah, let's talk about Asia next time, because that could be fun.
Yes.
We could have lots to talk about on that one. A couple of things bubbling under for us as well. And then, we're doing some other bits and pieces with some really, really cool hotels. And we're getting to go to the New Forest quite a bit as well, which is a beautiful part of the world, isn't it?
I'm excited to come and see that.
Yeah, it'd be good. Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for joining in and for sending some comments and messages. We love that. Maybe we do like a Q&A next time as we go in and see if we can answer some things.
Oh, and if anyone wants to join us, like we'll start with our normal babble, and then if anyone wants to join us, they can tell us what their brew and a biscuit is, and join the conversation. Please let us know. We'd happily like people to join.
100%. We should get Brian on next time because he likes whiskey. I was on Monty Silver's show with him, and he got his whiskey out because it had tipped over the time of being able to drink. So yeah. So what would it be there now for him? Midday. You can drink at midday. That's fine.
Oh, wait, have
nothing
a glass
wrong with whiskey.
at midday.
Okay, so next time our brew can be a glass of champagne, and we'll see if Brian can come on and do whiskey. That'll be funny. All right.
Thank you.
Perfect. See you later. Thank you.
Bye.
So there you have it, the first issue of Hospitality Brews. I'm really looking forward to the next one. So if you have a topic that you think we should talk about, please visit our LinkedIn profiles, send us a DM, and we'll be sure to cover them in the next episode. If you want to learn more about Auden Hospitality, visit our website, www.audenhospitality.com. And if you want to check out more from Michelle, visit qableadership.com.